our special guest of the day here joining us back from Brazil, Martin Frank, Delaware News Journal. Good morning, Frank. How you doing today?
Doing all right. How's it going, Phil?
Well, now that I got my camera fixed, I had a little camera issue there about a minute or two ago. We're good to go. My camera's in Brazil, I think. I think that's what's happening. It's still on vacation. I invited you on. You're probably tired of me asking you to come on because I've had you on a lot lately. But you are the guy that was down there in Brazil covering the Eagles. And I wanted to get your firsthand, not just thoughts on the Eagles, but the trip to Brazil and what it was like for the media. Because we've heard what the players and the fans have felt about it. But for the media, what was it like going down to Brazil there to cover the game?
Well, I mean, it was a great experience, to be honest with you. Everything was set up pretty well for the media. I was actually kind of surprised. Um, the NFL obviously did its share of legwork and stuff like that to have everything ready. The only problem was the traffic there is brutal. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you guys have all experienced obviously the Schuylkill at rush hour. You can barely move probably for like 4 or 5 miles. Well, like multiply that by like five, because Sao Paulo is like a humongous city. It's like 50% bigger than New York. So where like the media hotel was compared to the stadium was like a 20-mile, give or take 20-mile drive. The day of the game, I left like 5 hours before the game. It took me 3 hours to get there. It was just like crawling for 20 miles the entire trip. I could have walked probably faster. That was my only complaint. I mean, as far as like the Brazilian media, on Thursday, the day before the game, they were, it was kind of like a press conference for them to ask questions, and they were into it. You could tell there were some people there who knew about the NFL, asked some pretty good questions. There were others who like were totally clueless about it, and were asking kind of weird questions. But that's kind of that was fine. I mean, it wasn't a big deal. It was kind of entertaining, to be honest with you. The players liked it. I mean, Saquon Barkley, especially, seemed to really enjoy being there, answering questions. He was really proud of the fact that he scored the first touchdown in South America and stuff like that. So I would say overall it was a good trip for the media. I mean, they had us sitting, it was outdoors. They had us sitting in like the top corner of the stadium, but it wasn't that high up and everything like that. I mean, it wasn't bad at all. And I have absolutely no complaints about how the media was treated.
Well, and you heard a lot of the players complaining about the trip and having to take the trip. But it
Yeah.
seems like once the trip got started, once they got there, the experience was they realized the importance of the moment of going down there and playing that game.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Obviously, you got to take a 10-hour flight from Philly to Sao Paulo. It's a long flight. You're kind of wondering, what's the point? We're playing this big game against the Packers, in this place that's far away and everything like that. So and where the players were staying, they were staying closer to the stadium, which is also kind of near the airport. And that's not like a really great area of Sao Paulo. So I think a lot of what they were told beforehand, like, be careful when you're carrying your cell phone because people will swipe them. That kind of like discouraged them from like going out, from leaving the hotel room. And I think that was part of it going in. Like, they heard all these horror stories about the safety and everything. But I can tell you, like, from where the media was staying, and especially like the area I stayed in, I stayed in a different hotel. It was a really nice area. It was kind of like they had a lot of bars and restaurants. It was very walkable. I didn't feel like in danger at all. And I think once the players got there, they kind of saw how like the Brazilians were really into it. The fans there, they made up like 90% of the fans in the stadium, and they were chanting. It was like, they were watching a Brazilian soccer team game. They were chanting, they were dancing. and I think it caught some of the players by surprise. There were also a lot of Eagles fans. There were a lot of Packers fans. It was a really neat atmosphere during the game. I think from what I've heard, like you can kind of get a sense of that watching it on TV. Just
Mhm.
how loud it was in there. I mean, you couldn't tell that you were playing in South America as opposed to like the Link or Lambeau Field. Just from the noise level. I mean, some of it came at in our opportune times. But that was to be expected. I thought it was a great atmosphere.
Yeah, no, that watching it on TV, the first thing that I noticed about the game was when, the national anthem was played. And they were very respectful to our national anthem, but then the passion, they had all the Olympians out on the field, and every single person in that stadium was singing along with the national
Yeah,
anthem. Just from that moment on, I knew this was gonna be a special crowd that was gonna be really, truly into the experience. Maybe not everybody there understands football, but everybody there was into the experience.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I never heard anything like that when they played the Brazilian national anthem. Like everybody stood up and
Mhm.
sang it like loud. I mean, you never see that at a game here in the United
Yeah.
States. Like, you just kind of stand, you mumble the words, and then you're like, all right, time to sit down and get ready to play.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was.
I don't know. I was very impressed with that national pride that they took in
Yeah,
that open. I don't think anybody has talked about it or covered it or really discussed that moment of that before the game there.
yeah, I'd never seen anything like that before. I mean, that was wonderful. I mean, that was you never see that anywhere here. I mean, it just
Yeah.
doesn't happen. Like, and then yeah, and then during the game, like they would sing, they would dance, they would chant. I don't even know what it was they were chanting, but like at one point, like Devonte Smith said, he kind of looked up and was like, "What's going on?" and everything. It was a good experience, definitely.
All right. Well, let's get to the game itself then. Obviously, there's a plenty of highs, plenty of lows. They came away with the win. But the one thing that everyone's talking about is the field conditions and making excuses for this player or that player with the field conditions. Do you feel that the field conditions? I don't know. Did you get down on the field to actually like feel how the conditions were or not? And do you think they really truly impacted the players as much as people say?
Well, we were allowed to go down onto the field Thursday, like during the Eagles walkthrough practice, and you really couldn't tell. I mean, I didn't see anybody slipping or falling or anything like that. And Saquon Barkley kind of made a good point about it too after the game. It's like when you're going through warm-ups, you're not going at full speed.
Mhm.
So, they just wore their regular cleats because he wasn't having a problem. And then
Mhm.
obviously his first carry, I mean, you guys all saw that. He
Mhm.
slipped and fell, lost 5 yards, and he's like, okay, yeah, we all have to change our cleats. And they did pretty early in the game, and it wasn't as much of a problem, especially for the offensive players. Like, I think the offensive players have an advantage because if you have the ball in your hand, you know where you're going, you can make a cut and everything like that. The defense kind of has to react to it. And I think that's kind of what you saw, like kind of the rest of the game. Like the people who were slipping mostly were defensive players because, they're trying to react, they lose their footing and stuff. But I think, after Barkley and a lot of the offensive players changed their cleats early in the game, I don't think it was as much of a problem for them. But yeah, the field was an issue. From that point of view. But I don't think it was as bad as the Super Bowl because the Super Bowl you couldn't really do anything about it. It was mostly like the painted areas like near midfield, so that's about a 20-30 yard area that you were just going to slip no matter what. So I think in this case, like once the players adjusted, it wasn't as much of an issue.
Okay. Obviously, one of the big topics coming out of the game is Jalen Hurts and his performance. I know I watched the press conference on Monday with Nick Sirianni, and you did ask him. Well, first off, actually, I didn't realize we're getting the old school COVID style with the coach behind the screen and stuff like that for the press conference. And could you put in a request? I don't know if the media likes it, but as a fan that watches every press conference, I love that style of press conference because I can hear who's asking the question and I
Yeah.
can hear the full context of the question and not just the answer. So for me, it's easier watch. But you did ask Nick Sirianni about Jalen Hurts and his mistakes. What were your thoughts on how Jalen Hurts played? And were the mistakes just a lot of fans want to say it's just more of last year happening. I'm kind of looking at it on the positive side that Jalen Hurts still had a very, very good game considering all the changes to the offense, the center, the field conditions, the environment. All in all, I'm tending to lean towards the positive side that they were just two little mistakes. What was your thoughts on how Nick Sirianni responded to you on that question, but also your opinion on how Jalen Hurts performed?
Yeah. So first, like going back to the press conference, like um, usually like this, it's usually the day after press conference, but because they were in Brazil, that they had it on Monday. But and it's always been like by Zoom, like the day after
Okay.
conferences. So that's
I love the Zoom press conferences.
yeah.
I would take I don't know if it's good for you guys that way, but for
Uh,
me, I would take everything like that. So
there's good and bad. I mean, like if you have a stream of questions and stuff that you want to ask, I mean, you can, in the regular setting, you can ask it and like people follow up right away and stuff like that. So sometimes you can follow up on a particular theme. Here it's like you have to wait your turn, you get one question and then that's it. So there are pluses and minuses,
mhm,
but as for Hertz's performance, I kind of agree with you. I mean, when I asked him the question specifically of what he saw, or Sirianni, I'm talking about what he saw with Jalen's interceptions, he kind of like mentioned a lot of the good things he did, which he did. I mean, some of
mhm,
those touchdown passes were like beautiful, like the one to Barkley, the long pass to AJ Brown, and then became a 67-yard touchdown. I mean, those were great passes.
mhm,
But also the interceptions though were really, really bad. I mean,
mhm,
poor decision making. The first one he just threw into like triple coverage basically. The second one he's rolling to his right, especially at that juncture in the game. It's early in the fourth quarter. They have a 5-point lead. The worst case scenario, you kick a field goal, you're up by 8 points with like 12, 13 minutes to go. But he was rolling to his right. He threw across his body. It turns out AJ Brown fell, but even still, it was a poorly advised pass. He shouldn't have thrown it. Just throw it away, kick the field goal, go up by 8, and you're fine. And there were also a couple other passes that should have been intercepted. One of them, AJ Brown became a defender and broke it up.
mhm,
And the play before he threw the interception, like he threw one to the sideline that should have been a pick six. So it could have been even worse than it was. So yeah, I mean, those are concerning things. I mean, we saw a lot of that last year. He was trying to play hero ball, trying to force passes that weren't there, and it's a big concern. And it really doesn't have to be that way with all the talent they have on this team. I mean, hand the ball off to Saquon Barkley. If you're being pressured, throw the ball away. He was doing some of that earlier in the game. Like a couple times, there was nothing there. He threw the ball out of bounds, avoided a sack, and he's got to do that. I mean, you don't have to force plays with this offense. And even despite all the mistakes, they still scored 34 points, which tells
mhm.
you how good this offense can be, especially against a Green Bay team that's supposed to be one of the contenders for the NFC Championship. So, I mean, I would think if I'm Nick Sirianni, I'm having a long talk with Jalen Hurts about, not forcing passes, throw the ball away, fall down, take a sack, whatever, punt the ball even, you're going to get another chance. So I hope that's the lesson that comes out of that because if he doesn't turn the ball over, the Eagles should be able to score pretty much 30 points on anybody. That the offense is that good.
One more quick question: if you had to take Jalen Hurts out of the conversation, the most encouraging thing you saw on Friday night, and the most discouraging thing you saw from the Eagles on Friday night.
I'd say the most encouraging thing is Saquon Barkley. I mean, that guy is
Oh, easy.
tremendous.
That's just a layup right there.
Yeah. um, but if you want a non Saquon Barkley answer, I can say, I was also really encouraged with Quinyon Mitchell's play. For a rookie, he was thrown out there. A cornerback opposite of Darius Slay. He was tested right away with Jordan Love trying for that long touchdown pass to Christian Watson. He had perfect coverage, good leverage inside, and broke up the play. he's going to be really good. And I think, I was kind of expecting, like, before the game, before the game even started, that he would start on the outside. And then Isaiah Rogers' injury kind of clinched that, because he was playing a lot of nickel in training camp, but that guy's going to be on the field every play. And he's going to be really good. I mean, it's just a matter of time. He's got the right mentality. He's got the right attitude. He talked a little trash with Christian Watson after that play. You could tell he belongs. So I would say that was probably the most encouraging thing. And the most discouraging thing, I would have to say, was Bryce Huff. I mean, the guy not only did he not have a sack, he didn't even have a pressure. He's the guy they signed to a big contract, basically as Hassan Reddick's replacement. Not that Reddick did anything, because he's still holding out, and that would have been the case had he stayed with the Eagles. So, he did have one more tackle than Hassan Reddick did, but he's got to play better than that. I mean, we all kind of knew going in that he wasn't great against the run, but that's one thing. But if you're not getting any pressures or any, on the quarterback, that's a problem. So I think, like, the edge rusher position for the Eagles could be an issue this year. I mean, they got to get pressure on the quarterback, or else, those secondary guys are going to be hung out to dry.
Yep. So going forward this week, obviously they get back to practice here shortly. Are you zoning in on what they're doing to get ready for Atlanta? Are you zoning in on the injury report? Because to me, I'm waiting for that first injury report. That's like, I'm not even worried about the practice itself. I'm just worried about seeing whether Isaiah Rogers will be back out there, Devin White, availability and stuff like that. It seems like the team that went to Brazil came out rather, unscathed. Is that something that you're really zoning in on and focused in on here for the rest of this week?
Yeah, because they're playing on Monday night, that injury report isn't going to come out until Thursday. So, we probably won't know until then what, Isaiah Rogers' status is, or Devin White's. The one thing about Devin White, as well as, as big a role as he was expected to play. I mean, Zach Bond, like, played incredibly Friday night. He had 15 tackles, 2 sacks. Nakobe Dean didn't have a great game, especially like in pass coverage. I think the Packers kind of exploited that a little bit. So, I mean, they could obviously use Devin White. Like, I'm not saying he would play the whole game, but, as like a 3-man rotation for those 2 spots, I think that would be most effective for the Eagles, whether it's, White and Bond starting and Dean working in, or vice versa. But I think Zach Bond pretty much proved that he should be in there pretty regularly. I mean, he had a tremendous game. So yeah, I'd be interested to see what the injury report is, because I mean, I don't think they really trust Trotter yet to
Right.
to play that kind of role. So I mean, they need Devin White. So we'll see Thursday, like, what his status is. It seemed like it could be an injury that can maybe keep him out for another game, but I'm just speculating on that. I don't know. So
Okay.
we'll find out more later this
Yep.
week on that.
So I guess the first practice then will be Thursday, Friday.
Yeah.
Gotcha. That's what I was expecting it to be. I wasn't sure with the whole Brazil thing if they're changing a typical practice week up on a Monday Night Football or not.
Yeah, they push everything back a day because of Monday Night Football. So their 3 main days will be Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So, and the injury reports will come out each of those days.
I'm sure you're glad to be back stateside and just get to travel to a nice little city like Atlanta versus 9.5 hours down to Brazil. But Martin, thank you very much for your time this morning. I greatly appreciate it. Great coverage without your phone, without Twitter. Great coverage down in Brazil by all the reporters that went down there.
Yeah, that was kind of strange.
Hold on. Why wasn't your wife tweeting for you? I mean, everybody else had their significant others tweeting for them. You didn't give your password out to anybody.
She's not on Twitter. She's kind of fed up with it and stuff. So I didn't blame her for that. And it was actually kind of a nice break, a little, from all the other riffraff that's on there and everything like that. I started using Threads a little bit, and my paper was actually like retweeting like articles and stuff like that. So if you follow Delaware Online, on Twitter, you could have gotten some of that. But yeah, it was kind of a nice break, but
There you
I'm
go.
glad I'm back for sure.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time this morning. I greatly appreciate it. I promise I won't bother you anytime soon again. But
No,
you
that's
know,
fine. Anytime.
keep
Pleasure.
going, man, and great work this weekend in Brazil.
All right. Well, thanks for having me.
Thanks a lot, Martin. Again, Martin Frank, guys. M Frank NFL on Twitter. Great to have him on.